Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for a PathOfExile discussion live stream. Today we got all of the information on new and changed gems in Trial of the Ancestors. Now, most of this is changes that we already knew from the patch notes, although there may be one or two things that have changed that we weren't expecting. However, the big information that we got today is hard numbers on all of the new stats. On all of the new gems, hard stats for them. Some of them are fantastic, a couple of them are head-scratchingly bad, but most of them are really, really good. So I'm thinking that this is going to be a huge shake-up to the metagame. There's a lot of support for Ignite here. There's a lot of support for just doing weird things that haven't been popular before. Things that you've always been able to do in PathOfExile, but that might have been one or two gem levels worse than doing something else, has now gotten quite a lot of support. So what we're going to do is go through all of the new gems, and I'll give a bit of quick discussion on each of them, answer some questions from chat as they come up, and then we will go and have a look and see what sort of things might be build consequences for them. The first one to discuss is one that I think I'm most excited about here, and that is Controlled Blaze Support. Now, this is a support gem that is telling you you want to be doing melee attack ignites, and it also requires you to do a whole lot of really careful balancing of your attack speed. So we'll come to this in a sec, but the best numbers on this, you want to have an attack speed that is more than 300 milliseconds, less than 333 is ideal for Controlled Blaze, but you can be a little bit outside that. What you don't want is a situation where you're attacking more than 5 times a second or fewer than 3. If you're in that, fewer than 2. More than 5 or fewer than 2, this gem is complete and utter garbage. More than 4, it's pretty marginal. But if you're attacking in that sweet spot of about 3.5 attacks per second, then Controlled Blaze Support is a tremendous damage multiplier here. So the way that this works, notice that it is giving the supported skill 14% more damage with Ignite for each Ignite inflicted with it recently, up to a maximum of 364%, but also 3% less total damage. And this also applies to Ignites. This is not just Ignite damage, this is hit and Ignite. 3% less damage for each Ignite inflicted with it recently, up to a maximum of 78%. This is quadratic scaling that's running against you. So this is something where it's the first Ignite adds the most damage, then each subsequent Ignite starts adding a little bit less. But the way that the numbers pan out, the best spot to be in is 13 attacks per 4 seconds, with this being solid at 9 to 16. Then it's solid, then it's better than other support gems. But once you fall outside that range, this gem is complete and utter rubbish. So in exchange for that, you are getting a tremendous damage buff. I looked at this gem, and once I thought this was the way it was going to work, I looked at this gem and possible numbers for it, and I thought that it would be quadruple. The upside would be quadruple the downside. And on that basis, I thought this gem was going to be good enough to use. Instead, it's 4 2/3 times the downside. And this makes this one of the highest number gems in the game for Ignite builds. If you can make an attack Ignite build working, then this is going to be really good. Now, I do think it's worth noting that this is not going to give us any info on the alternate qualities that are available. We're going to have to find out what those are, and that'll be something that we won't likely get until all of the pre-patch information is able to be data mined, and that's probably going to be about 18 hours before League start. So yeah, Controlled Blaze is really, really, really good. And this is going to be a phenomenal skill if you can make an Ignite build work. Now, one thing to note, this does destroy one of my meme build ideas. I was thinking Ground Slam Ignite, but using Zerfy's Heart and also using, what's the name of that support? What's the name of that thing? The Soul Eater from Vile Ground Slam. So Vile Ground Slam would then give you a tremendous burst to attack speed for a period because it sets off Soul Eater. This does not work with Soul Eater. Soul Eater is really bad with this. And also that means that Controlled Blaze is an absolute get rid of this gem if you get a Headhunter. Then at that point, you definitely don't want to have this. So yeah, Controlled Blaze is really, really, really solid. And something that's coming up in chat is that multiple targets might actually ruin this. And I think that is a good point. If you're fighting against multiple different enemies, it's still going to do some damage. But if there's weak enemies present, they are going to undermine your ability to use Controlled Blaze well, because you are going to be dealing more Ignites with it. That's a very good point. And that is kind of going to be a problem with this. This is very much a boss killing support. It's still going to be serviceable because it caps out at that 364/78%, which means that even when it's working against you, it's not absolutely annihilating all your damage. It's still bad if you're hitting 25 different targets with it. It's still a bad support gem, but it's not something that is absolutely completely rendering you unable to deal damage. So the worst case scenario for this is that you are fighting a boss where there's like the worst case scenario for this is that you're fighting multiple heavy targets at once. If you're in that situation, then Control Blaze is going to wreck your day. However, one exception, maybe you've got a really slow attacking skill like Earthquake, and you're using Earthquake with Control Blaze support, and then you actually might want to be hitting 4 or 5 enemies so you can inflict more ignites all around. So yeah, this is going to be messy with proliferation probably. Ultimately, I think that this is still such a good gem that it's worth using. And like people are saying in chat, it's not like it absolutely does nothing. It's not like it absolutely kills your character off entirely when you end up in a situation where you're outside that sweet spot. It just goes from being an amazing support gem to a disappointing one. So yeah, Control Blaze support, really interesting and really high numbers on it for single target or for whatever number of targets you want to optimize for, which generally is going to be single. And this is a powerful gem, but one with genuine drawbacks. So people are talking about Flicker Strike being too fast. Yes, Flicker Strike would be too fast for this. I don't see there's any real use for this. This is something where you want to... this is something where if you want to go for multiple targets, you want to use Earthquake. If you're wanting to go single target, you want something like Ground Slam, and to get that attack speed in the 300 to 333 millisecond range. Corrupting Cry support comes next. Now, the most important number on this is 601.5 base physical damage per second. Why don't we have a look at something that does something similar? Welcome to Corrupting Fever. And Corrupting Fever at gem level 20 is level 70 required, and it's 335.4 damage per second. Contrast to here, we're also level 70 required, but we're 601.5. So this is a lot more damage, a lot more damage than Corrupting Fever is, even though Corrupting Fever is going to have access to one additional support gem. So you want to keep that in mind. Corrupting Cry does have quite a bit going for it there, in that it's going to have fairly good damage compared to the existing Corrupting Fever. However, cost and reservation multiplier 1000%. This is not a support gem that is going to be cheap to use. In fact, I might just check the mana cost on Infernal Cry, because that's the thing you're likely to use with it. Infernal Cry is going to cost 1000% as much, and its base mana cost is... what's the mana cost on this? Cost is 19 at high, or 19 or 20 at high gem level, so that's 200 mana. If you're wanting to use this in conjunction with Life Tap, that's now going to be 600 life, which is manageable, but that's before you then apply any support gems that add damage. So if you're going to then have Brutality, I think Brutality is 40%, so that's 840. If you have 2 more, you're looking at spending a lot of life on Corrupting Cry. Alternately, you're looking at spending a lot of mana, which your build may not be able to afford that much mana. So a lot of things here that are really, really going to hurt. Additionally, the Corrupted Blood base duration being 2 seconds, you really need to scale that up a lot. You're going to need to stack duration for this to be anything useful at all. So there's a bunch of things that could potentially be useful here. Corrupting Cry it has high power level, but it is hard to use. This is not something that you just throw onto any build. This is something that you need to build around, and you need to find ways to manage all of the difficulties there. I've seen a couple of people commenting in chat that they've just got here. You do have the option of rewinding a live stream on YouTube and putting it to 175% normal speed, and you will catch up pretty quickly if you do that. I think it'll only take you about 10-12 minutes to catch up to where we are now. Flamewood Support is next. Flamewood Support is going to cause your totems to retaliate with something that is a great ball of fire. This is screaming you probably want to ignite with this damage, because the amount of damage that this is doing, it's a very slow lob. It's a 1 second cast time, but the retaliatory damage from it is enormous. Decoy Totem is probably the best use for this, even though Rejuvenation Totem... Rejuvenation Totem, I think, is the one that has the highest life total. So Rejuvenation Totem would have the highest damage potential, but it's not going to hit unless you're a chieftain with Arongi Moon's Presence. If you are a chieftain with that, then yeah, you can use Rejuvenation Totem and get even more damage out of this. But I feel like this is probably going to be better on an Elementalist or something like that. So this is something that I think has a lot of potential to deal damage if you can make it work, but I feel it's better with Ignite than pretty much anything else. One key question I have with this gem is, does Avenging Flame go off if the totem dies to the attack that triggers it? So for instance, if a monster, let's say that you're fighting the Shaper, and the Shaper is taunted by this thing. I don't actually remember if you can taunt the Shaper or not, but let's just say the Shaper slams the Shaper slams the Flamewood Totem, and then this is going to one-shot the totem. The totem then fires off. Does the totem fire its retaliation shot or not? This is going to live or die based on that, but this is not going to be widely used. It's niche. It looks like it could be quite strong, but it's definitely doing something. It's definitely doing something interesting. Dead totems don't usually trigger things, so we'll have to have a look at it. But it's a lot of base damage for an Ignite, but it's also a clunky setup, difficult to make work. So I'm not sold on this gem. I am not sold on this gem, but it might have some interesting utility. It's also something you could conceivably link to Searing Bond support. It's just that you've then got to invest in making the damage ignite. If you're willing to invest in making the damage ignite, it can work. And to be honest, I am thinking of trying this on my League starter. I'm still considering a League start Chieftain Righteous Fire, and if I do that, I'm definitely using Searing Bond. There's no question about it. I'm using Searing Bond and I'm using the Totem Taunt node in the Ascendancy. But if I do that, Flamewood Support comes at the expense of probably throwing my own fire traps, because they'd be competing with each other. Really need to see what the numbers end up impelling me to do. But Searing Bond totems, actually, why don't we have a look at Searing Bond? The hit points on these totems are based upon the gem level, so that's actually going to scale up really high. The monster level of the totem is equal to the monster level of the... is equal to the gem's minimum requirement to use. So up to gem level 30, that goes up by 2 levels each point. So yeah, there's a lot going for this gem. It's not like it does nothing, and it's something that I want to experiment with, but you are going to have to make things ignite, which I don't feel like a build around. I don't feel like this build is something that's going to be something that's already going to be doing. Now, someone is pointing out in chat that you can use this as a way of applying combustion. I think that is definitely an option. I wouldn't be using combustion on a chieftain probably, because while you're moving your the whole chieftain package is that it doesn't strip resist. It instead sets them to 0, and the difference there is that the chieftain performs worse against monsters that have inherently low or medium resist, and better against monsters that have extraordinary resist. So for instance, the Maven has medium resist. Against the Maven, the chieftain's package of dealing with fire resistance is worse than that of a Juggernaut. But against something like an Ultra Enhanced Map Boss that has plus 160% fire res from an altar, then at that point, the Juggernaut package does absolutely nothing. Like, it brings their resist from overcapped at 210% down to overcapped at 105%, but it does a lot to have Ramako instead. So there's a couple of thoughts there. There's a bunch of things that are going, and someone's suggesting, yeah, that this is probably worth trying on an Elementalist. I think that that could well be right. Like, there is a build around package for this on an Elementalist, but I am at least tempted to experiment with this. And the best thing is, if the experiment doesn't work with Flamewood Support, I can just replace it on the same build with Fire Trap. As long as I'm not using a Skin of the Lords, that's an easy swap to make. And if I am using a Skin of the Lords, it's obviously much harder to change a gem out. But at that point, you can just go, yep, Flamewood out, Fire Trap in, and now I'm going to drop my Searing Bonds first, and then follow up with the Fire Traps, and that's going to be the different way that you would play that. One thing I would consider with this, Decoy Totem and Flamewood would be a lot of damage leveling, as Enraged Monkey is saying exactly the same thing in chat as I've been thinking this. This could be a very effective thing to donk Katava on the head with, for instance. Just having something that is absorbing the boss's attacks and also counterattacking in a meaningful way, and probably isn't getting one-shot except by damage over time areas. So someone's asking the cooldown on Flamewood is... The cooldown's actually listed in the Avenging Flame. It's the cast time is 1 second and the cooldown is 1 second. Now, the big question though is what happens, like from a hit-based perspective on this, what happens if you've got a lot of totems up? If you're using Searing Bond's Phantasmal quality, I think it is, you can have 4 Searing Bond totems down with no investment into additional totems. Can all of these fire off Avenging Flame lobs? Is this useful? My gut says the answer is no, but because like if you're igniting, you only care about one of them. There's a little bit of fishing for the best roll of damage, so there is some little bonus to it, but not a large amount. Going from ignite once, actually, what is the fire damage range on this? No, it's not even. There's not even range on it. It's just a flat amount. So you might occasionally get a crit and do more damage, but that's really all you'd get. One other question that I would have with this is that if you have Searing Bond totem linked to Avenging Flame support and linked to Flamewood support, if Avenging Flame crits, is that deemed to be a critical strike inflicted by Searing Bond for the purposes of Elemental Overload? I think the answer is no, but that's one. I think it would only be for the purposes of future Avenging Flame projectiles, but I am curious as to exactly how that works. So there's a lot of weird and wonderful things that are going on there, and that's, yeah, this is looking like it's got some stuff going for it. Interesting comment in chat about Saboteur's trigger bots as well could be really interesting. Although, no, this is triggered by... This is not actually triggered. This is your totem casting a spell. I don't think that works. So this skill is niche. I don't think it's very good overall, but I am willing to try it potentially at League Start as a supplementary damage source on a skill, but I have a backup plan. If Flamewood doesn't work, then my backup plan is clear. My backup plan is that it comes out to Fire Trap. Guardian's Blessing support is incredible. Their numbers on this is so much better than I thought. The numbers on this look amazing. So just answering a couple of questions in chat actually on Flamewood. Can you do greater multiple projectiles with Flamewood? I believe the answer is yes. Does GMP... Yes, I believe the answer is yes. I believe you could support this. You could support the totem with greater multiple projectiles, and I believe that would work on Avenging Flame as well. Comment about Elemental Overload. Elemental Overload will increase damage over time skills, but it requires the skill to have done a critical strike. So there's a whole bunch of really interesting ideas that people are having on this, but I do want to jump on to Guardian's Blessing because, wow, this thing is amazing. So Guardian's Blessing support is going to provide 32% increased aura effect, but instead of you conjuring the aura, your minion conjures the aura. This doubles the mana cost of the minion, which is pretty painful a lot of the time. That's something that's easily underestimated. A lot of minions cost a lot to summon. And it also is going to drain 14.3% of the minion's total maximum life and energy shield as physical damage per second while you have an aura from supported skill on you. However, there is an incredible use case for this, and that is Mask of the Stitched Demon. Mask of the Stitched Demon is a unique helmet that comes out of incursion content, and it has the text that you, and in this case your animated guardian because you're putting it on an AG, you gain 1% life regen per second per 500 maximum energy shield your character has. Now, Animate Guardian, I believe, at gem level 20 has something like, I think it has something like 143,000 hit points. I'd have to confirm that, so don't trust that I'm right on that. But if you can give it 20% of its life as extra maximum energy shield, then that helmet is going to then give it something like 40-50% physical damage regenerated per second as life, and Guardian's Blessing is then going to be sustained forever on that. So Mask of the Spirit Drinker in conjunction with Guardian's Blessing is absolutely phenomenal. There is a node on the passive tree, I think it's on the classic tree, that grants that 20% of life added as extra maximum energy shield. So yeah, you can definitely sustain Guardian's Blessing forever on an Animate Guardian, and that Animate Guardian will be intrinsically tanky as well. Obviously, Animate Guardian can die, but that is going to be, and there's going to be a lot of demand for Mask of the Spirit Drinker this league. Now, I'm going to quickly check Mask of the Spirit Drinker's drop location and info. I know that it's an incursion item, but I just want to check whether it's the upgraded version. So it's Mask of the Spirit Drinker is... Oh, no, it's not that one. It's the upgraded version. Sorry, we're talking about Mask of the... It's Mask of the Stitched Demon is the one that we're talking about here. So Mask of the Stitched Demon is the one your AG has. 1% of life per second per 500 max energy shield, and energy shield provides no other benefits. It's always 0. So that's the item that we're talking about here. Mask of the Stitched Demon. Drawback to doing things live is that you do sometimes get items confused. This is the upgraded version. This means Vial of Summoning is going to be more expensive than usual. This can only be used with Mask of the Spirit Demon. This is going to be this league's Slave Driver's Hand, the item from Incursion that's often 10, 15 divines, even into week 3 and 4, and early on can be as much as a fifth of a mirror. So Mask of the Stitched Demon, very expensive this league, but very good because of Guardian's Blessing. Like, it's going to allow people to have an extra aura, and we know how powerful an extra aura is. They're not going to have to deal with any of the mana issues that come with using a different blessing. This is going to be absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, this is going to be so strong. Comment in chat that Righteous Fire Juggernaut isn't killing Uber bosses. That's normally the case. Like, for a Righteous Fire Juggernaut to kill Uber bosses requires an extremely long protracted fight. It is not a boss killing build. If you want a boss killing build, a Trapper is generally better. It's not like players better than me can do it. They can beat the Uber Pinnacles on Righteous Fire Jug, but I don't think it's a good build choice for it. Go a Trapper if you want to get to learn the Uber Pinnacles. And if you were considering following my thoughts and going Righteous Fire Chieftain, you'll be even worse against Pinnacles. You'll struggle against your own Uber Elder and Maven, but you'll pick up a lot more damage against rare monsters in maps, the Giga Tanky ones anyway. Now this does replace your other blessings, but the other blessings cost a lot of mana. So like there's a lot of mana that comes up in your way. So this means that, like, if you're using the other blessings, you usually need Eldritch Battery on one of them. You don't need Eldritch Battery here. You can use your energy shield to mitigate. You can use your energy shield in other ways, basically. You're no longer using your spending 1,000 energy shield every now and again in order to cast a blessing. So yeah, this is a lot here. There is a lot that's going for it. People are saying, yeah, they have beaten Uber bosses on Righteous Fire Juggernauts, but if you invest 1/10 that amount into a Trapper, you'll have them down too. Trauma Support is next, and this is not able to be used with Facebreaker for some funny reason. This is not able to be used with Swords for some funny reason. The two reasons for that are that this gem would have had to be pre-nerfed if it was able to be used in conjunction with any of Doomfletch, Voidforge, or Facebreakers. Because it's not, it's able to be released with full power. I'm still not sold on it. I think this is a gem that's going to be incredibly good when you're leveling up. This is going to be one of those gems that while you're leveling a character, it's going to provide you with a tremendous boost of damage. But that is only going to be for the period that you have a bad weapon. Once you've got a good weapon, this is going to be trash. Additionally, this does absolutely nothing useful on two-handed weapons. This is a one-handed weapon skill, which is really weird. Like, that's something that you might not use. Someone has mentioned Pillar of the Caged God in chat, though. And I had forgotten that item existed. Thank you for the reminder. Let me just bring it up for... Pillar of the Caged God is one of those unique items that is quite bad, but that is very, very niche useful. So the key reason here is 16% increased physical damage per 10 strength. Now, you're getting a huge amount of flat physical on a weapon that has no inherent flat physical here. That is really strong. And so Pillar of the Caged God is a use case for trauma support that I'd missed that one. There'll be a few other ones as well, but the key thing here is that this is not going to be good on a stock standard two-handed axe, the sort of builds that typically run Bone Shatter. This is going to be on its own build, and Pillar of the Caged God is probably the best use case for it. There will be other skills people use, but this is if you want to play one-handed Bone Shatter for something a little bit different. The main thing to watch for on Trauma Support, is there a divergent quality that is similar to Divergent Bone Shatter? Now, people are talking about Cuss When Damage Taken shenanigans with this. I feel like you could use Cuss When Damage Taken in conjunction with defensive skills, but offensively, like for offensive spell spamming, I don't think it's that useful. There's just better ways to set up damage loops on it. So the numbers on this are quite good inherently, but it's going to be tricky to get working, and it is a one-handed weapon skill. So yeah, Frost Breath is nice as well. People are mentioning there, but I really think that the best one is Pillar of the Caged God, as just something that has just such unusual scaling that makes it really stand out. So Frost Breath, we'll just bring up that weapon because it's one that's coming up a lot in chat. And there is also a replica of this as well, but let's just go to the base version here. So again, this is a weapon with pretty marginal physical damage, a little bit of extra fizz, and a little bit of extra cold. Modest attack speed, not much, but it has this attacks with this weapon deal double damage to chilled enemies stat, and that means that it's getting essentially, assuming that you've got an APS of 1.37 on this, it's sort of like having an APS of 2.74 instead. So you're getting a lot of extra benefits there. Paradoxica is the other one that comes to mind as something else that does that. The replica version of this, I just want to quickly remind myself what it does. It's, replica version of this is pretty much the same. Your chaos damage can chill, and it also does basically the same thing. You are probably going to want to be converting your damage into something else that chills with Frost Breath or the replica version. So yeah, that's something that's looking like it's alright. Not a Goose is asking in chat the numbers on Corrupting Cry to Corrupting Fever. Corrupting Cry does much more damage, but has a massive mana multiplier, so you'll need to take that into account. It's going to be harder to use, but if you can use it, it's going to be pretty good. Corrupting Cry looks like it's good. You're going to need a lot more duration stacking on Corrupting Cry as well. You're really going to want to get your duration. You can get skill effect duration to 400% total, can't you? There's 2 clusters for 45% increased, so that's 90% increased. There's 10% more on the tree, so now you're looking at 219% baseline duration. You then need to get a bunch elsewhere, and yeah, it's been a while since I've really stacked any sort of duration. Oh, of course, Paradoxica can't be used. Thank you, another player in chat. Yep, I had a brain fart there. Paradoxica is a sword, and so it doesn't work because all swords can't be used with trauma support because Voidforge exists. Voidforge is something that would be so broken with trauma support that they had to basically prevent anything from being used there. Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of things that will allow you to get going there. Again, also claws can't be used with it either. So there's a lot of things that people could play around with it, and it's going to be solid. Couple of other questions coming up in chat. Is Spark Inquisitor a good choice for 322? Yes, it is, I believe. I believe it should be good all the way through the game. There's someone who, on the PathOfExile build subreddit, who has run a Spark character, a Spark Inquisitor character through the axe and said that it was really strong just as a test run. And it's also something that scales really well with an external aura support. So there's lots and lots of stuff there. And then we have the... Yeah, and also there is the option of applying stacks through exerted attacks with Corrupting Cry. Okay, so Volatility Support. This thing looks both amazing and terrible if used wrong. So let's start with when this is terribly wrong to use. Let's imagine that you deal flat damage, like you deal an exact amount of damage with your attacks. So you've got no variance, you just deal 100 to 100 damage. This is going to be a damage nerf. You're going to be doing 31 to 158 damage, which is less than 100 to 100. However, Volatility Support is incredible in conjunction with anything that any skill that has a very low bottom end damage and a very high top end damage. So this is going to be really, really strong here. And this is also going to make the Gladiator Violent Retaliation, I think it's called, the node that makes your physical damage lucky if you've blocked recently. Rizlatha's Coil is going to be good with this. Bleed builds are going to love this. It's more maximum attack damage is a stat that works with Bleed. So this is really strong. This is going to stack with Rizlatha's Coil, which we've got here. So Rizlatha's Coil gives 30 to 40% more maximum physical attack damage and exactly the same amount less minimum physical damage. These are going to stack multiplicatively with each other. And as a result, that's not what we're after. as a result, Volatility, just the numbers on this are so good that this is going to be really, really good. And now people are talking about lucky lightning damage. Just be aware that lucky lightning damage is a lot harder to get now than it used to be. So there was a period where this would have been absolutely phenomenal because of the lightning mastery that provided your non-critical strikes that deal lightning damage is lucky. That no longer exists, and you now need to get it from the Esh amulet. So this is going to be really strong when you're inflicting bleeds on a character that's at least attacking often enough that you can, that you can hit a monster 2 or 3 times in the period that a bleed is running, because your variability is going to be huge. It's also going to be, like we said, really good with Violent Retaliation on a Gladiator, but probably better than Violent Retaliation on a Gladiator is Violent Retaliation on a Champion or a Slayer that has been pulled there using the Forbidden Jewel set. So I think that Forbidden Jewels that grant Violent Retaliation will be really good this league because this support gem exists, and also the Champion will see an uptick in play, the Slayer will see an uptick in play. Gladiator will be an option. Like, you could start this build as a Gladiator until you're able to afford those, and then at that point you'd be able to make this work. Lightning Strike is another thing that people are talking about in chat, and I just want to quickly remind myself the numbers on Lightning Strike, because it's something that Lightning might help if I actually type a little bit more of the name. So Lightning Strike is very much a good example. So you're getting 9 to 179 added lightning damage. A weapon like Essentia Sanguis is going to do a very large amount of damage here. Now, Essentia Sanguis is super rare. In fact, let's bring Essentia Sanguis up now, because it's going to come up again when we get to Spellblade support. Essentia Sanguis was Giga buffed in 320, but it was also made Giga Rare. And you'll see that it adds 1 to 650 average lightning damage. This item's so rare that you might even consider divining it to get a better roll, but you're going to be focused on the attack speed roll, not focused on the lightning damage roll. So if you had Lightning Strike with Essentia Sanguis, then you're going to be dealing a very large amount of lightning damage there. And then that is going to be something that, because you've got such a low bit minimum and such a high maximum, you're basically going to be getting almost 58% more damage from Volatility Support. The drawback on this is negligible, because you're only doing 10 base lightning damage on that setup of Essentia Sanguis and Lightning Strike. Now, Essentia Sanguis is the extreme outlier. If you have a rolled item instead, let's go to modifiers and bring up the claws. So let's say that you have an electrocuting or a vaporizing weapon. Vaporizing is 21 to 344 lightning damage. So it's basically, even then, like, only the amount that's getting nerfed here, you're only losing a smidgen. You will lose whatever your weapon's physical damage component is. Volatility is not going to be important on that, and Lightning Strike does convert some of that. So, the 50% of your physical damage that converts to lightning is going to end up being nerfed by this, but that's okay. That's not an important part of the damage you're doing with any of these setups. Volatility Support, really, really, really good as a result of this. I think that this is one of the best support gems here. Now, a couple of things that people are mentioning in chat at the moment are, for people that joined late, you can rewind this and jump it up to 175% speed if you want. That tends to work. Control Blaze is really good though. You want to hit 13 times a 4 seconds, and it has some issues if you're hitting ads as well. Ephemeral Edge is coming up in chat as something that does a lot of damage, and I'm just bringing that up because this is an item that was Giga buffed again in Kalandra's buffs. Ephemeral Edge, it is quite a bit rarer than it used to be, and I might just check the rarity before we go any further so that I can set expectations on how likely you are to get this thing. I'm doing this in my other tabs so that you don't get flashbanged. Okay, Ephemeral Edge is probably... Ephemeral Edge is a tier 3 unique, so it's not actually as rare as I thought it was. So Ephemeral Edge is going to be something that is going to provide you with a huge amount of maximum lightning damage, equal to your 20% of your max ES. It also provides you a chunk of ES as well. Note that one thing that's very important, this is a below the line mod. So this is not something that's reflected up here, and so Ephemeral Edge is not going to work when we get to Spellblade support, which is probably the best of the lot here. But this is something that is going to do a very, very, very large amount of additional damage here. So very, very large amount of additional lightning damage, and I think that as a result, Volatility Support's going to send it over the edge. And Hyon's Fury is interesting. I actually have that. No, I had that brought up, and I must have accidentally shut it. So that is, I've got to remember how to spell that. Hyaon's Fury. Hyon's Fury is the next one that we've got here, and that is also adding a monstrous upper end chunk of lightning damage. And again, this is exactly the same as Essentia Sanguis. It's just a little bit worse than Essentia Sanguis, but that's fine because it's a lot more common. You could definitely run this setup with Hyon's Fury. You could use Energy Blade as an option. You could use all sorts of things. Basically, anything that's an attack skill that is overwhelmingly dealing lightning damage, Volatility Support is going to be good on. If you're overwhelmingly dealing cold and fire damage, most of the time the damage range on that is 80% to 120%. And at that point, this is not worth the support gem slot. It does add damage, but it's just not a compelling support gem at all. So this is going to be one of those things that will be used as well with Blade Trap. People are mentioning Blade Trap in other contexts in chat. Blade Trap is one of those gems that potentially does a lot of damage, but people don't like. Ephemeral Edge, Volatility Support, Blade Trap, there's a lot of potential there. So definitely think about that as something you could play around with. I think that Ephemeral Edge could be much more expensive than it's been in the past. It is still only tier 3 rarity. It's definitely not tier 2. It is definitely tier 3. So it's the same rarity as Cold Iron Point and same rarity as Heat Shiver. I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up in comparable price trajectory to Heat Shiver had this league. Rebuke of the Vaal is coming up as well. And Rebuke of the Vaal is something that is tier 2 rarity, I believe. So it is much, much, much harder to get. So lots of good things there. Volatility Support, just the numbers are right on it. So where Control Blaze Support, I said the numbers are good, but there's a couple of issues with additional monsters. For Volatility Support is just really good. There's no real complexity to it. It's just, there are builds that it's good on. So quick summary of all the red gems. We have Control Blaze Support is very good on a one-on-one fight against one monster when your attacks per second are in the 3 to 3.3 range. So your attack duration is between 300 milliseconds, 333. Or if it's slightly outside that, it's still good. In a one versus many situation, it's a bit clunky and awkward because it's going to be bad until you reduce the number of monsters down low and you've got them down low for 4 seconds. That said, that's fine. You can live with that. You don't need to deal constant damage. It's bad against bosses that have multiple adds, and it's also going to be something that's a bit tricky in Maven 4-ways. This is going to be a really difficult thing to use in Maven 4-ways. It's also going to have issues where you might have to zip away from a fight for a bit. So this is a gem that is absolutely phenomenal if you are fighting a training dummy, but we don't fight training dummies in the game, and sometimes you have to zip away from a monster for a bit. That's going to then crangle your damage for 4 seconds. So keep all those things in mind. I still think Control Blaze, the numbers are high enough that it is a good gem, but it is not the overwhelmingly amazing gem that I thought at first. Next we have Corrupting Cry, which is going to be very hard to use, very strong, and like people have said in chat, I do think you probably need to be hitting monsters with those exerted attacks. So it's not just going to be enough to inflict it with the Warcry itself. You are going to need to then donk monsters on the head a little bit in order to get restock the duration of Corrupting Cry. I don't think you can just use this as a Warcry. It's got a huge mana cost multiplier, so you've got to keep that in mind, but it will be worth it. Flamewood, very niche, but I am going to try this out, I think. I want to try this out. I want this to be good in conjunction with Searing Bond, especially Phantasmal Searing Bond, and the Chieftain's Totem's Taunt node. I think there's some potential there. If it turns out that I'm wrong, I've got a backup plan, which is to remove Flamewood Support, replace it with Fire Trap, which scales off all the same things, and instead of my totems throwing extra deathly balls of fire, I will throw an extra trap of fire instead. Guardian's Blessing is the next one for a recap. And this is really good, especially in conjunction with Mask of the Stitch Demon and Animate Guardian. If you can get Animate Guardian with Mask of the Stitch Demon and a high amount of basic life on it, and you can also get a bit of life converted to energy shield on it, then you will have a monstrously tough thing. Mask of the Stitch Demon will be this league's possibly best Animate Guardian helmet, and it's pretty rare, so it's going to be in demand all league. It's going to be something for high end only. If you're looking for something lower end, kind of think you could do this in conjunction with a low hit point minion that you're then supplementing, keeping alive through the use of Vitality. You might be able to do that. Trauma support. This is probably not very good on a high quality two-handed weapon. But if you've got a rubbish one-handed weapon, trauma support should be good. And if you've got Pillar of the Caged God, it should be very good. Finally, we have Volatility Support, which we've just been discussing. Very good on lightning damage attacks and very good on bleed builds. Very, very good, actually. Like, this is tremendous here. And so, all right. Now, we'll jump down to our green supports. Locus Mine. My first thoughts on this were, this looks terrible. Then I had another look at it, and another look, and another look. And I just compared this, this is going to be a really powerful thing for bossing on bow miners and wand miners. Now, this does not work with rain skills. It is things that fire projectiles ahead. So no toxic rain, or maybe it works with caustic arrow. I'm not 100% certain on that. That fires an arrow ahead. So it's not going to work with rain of arrows, though. It's also not going to be good with caustic arrow, although it would potentially work. This is going to then allow you to get a very, very, very large amount of extra damage and be used in conjunction with Burning Arrow in particular. That's the thing that stands out, and someone else has come up with that exact interaction in chat. It is really, really strong. This feels like it's going to do a tremendous amount of damage against bosses, all the way through the game if you're playing Burning Arrow. And it might be that if you feel like your Burning Arrow has enough damage for killing bosses enough damage for killing trash easily, you might have a double setup. In your bow, you have Locus Mine linked to Burning Arrow with a bunch of other things that are for for single target. And notice that Locus Mine does not work with multiple projectiles at all. So you only want to be firing one projectile with this, or maybe a little bit more. But you don't want to be scaling your projectiles. And then you have your main skill as your main 6 link for clearing trash as well. Locus Mine is probably something that will be used for that purpose, for killing bosses and killing things that are unusually tanky. So your Locus Mine support might have elemental penetration supports on it, whereas whatever you're using for killing trash might instead focus on other things instead. You might even use faster attacks in that place in your main setup. Locus Mine is looking pretty good, I think. The one thing that's a drawback with this is you have to be able to reserve some mana. So this is going to be really, really strong. Someone has pointed out something that I had forgotten with Volatility Support. Replica Elbrons. Oh my god, Replica Elbrons is going to be nuts. That is just incredible, 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 incredible. So yeah, that's something really strong. Am I getting Burning Arrow and Explosive Arrow confused? The one that you want to stack up to 20. Yeah, that is Explosive Arrow. All right, I'm an idiot. Explosive Arrow. This is going to be something that, if you're playing Explosive Arrow without Ballistae, this is the one to use. I always get those two mixed up. Returning Projectile Support is the worst scaling that I thought. Now, this is a 39% more damage multiplier if the monster stands still long enough to be hit by the returning projectile. I don't think that's going to happen all the time. And for that reason, I think this is quite a bit worse than 39% more damage. For that reason, I'm not sold on returning projectile support. I don't think it's terrible, but I don't think it's quite there. It's going to depend on your projectile speed, but I feel like it's just not quite enough for this to be amazing. Oh, and a question's come up in chat about what the can't detonate when you're within 30 radius. So 30 radius, 75 radius is 70 or 75 is the leftmost side of the screen to the center of the screen. Sorry, 85. 85 is that radius. So it's if you're within 1/6 of the screen of the mines, you can't detonate. So you've got to be a bit further away. So Yeah, that's so for Replica Elbronze. The reason for this is Replica Elbronze is 1 to X. It's the same thing as Lightning. It's the same thing as Lightning. It's the minimum damage is very low already. The maximum is high. So basically, there's no drawback to this gem. It's just 58% more maximum attack damage. Will Nimbus be as good as Vengeant Cascade was last league? Nimbus will be very good, but Nimbus is one of those things you have to play around with. You really have to experiment with the item to get a bit of a sense as to exactly how it feels. Nimbus will be more available because there's that Divination card, even though that Div card's going to be extremely rare and expensive. Every time that a not quite Mageblood / Headhunter tier item has had a Div card added, it's cratered the price pretty quickly. Pericle's Toe is coming up as giving lucky hit damage. So let's just... how do I spell Pericle's Toe is the question. Maybe if I just type in toe. Yeah, there it is. Perquil's, that's it. Pericle's Toe is nearby allies damage with hits is lucky. So if you were to... yeah, if you're benefiting from this, then that's something that's an option as well. Like getting all that extra stuff. So yeah, lucky damage, Volatility Support makes lucky damage even better. If your minimum damage is 1 and your maximum damage is, let's say, 1,000, Volatility is 58% more damage, and going from not lucky to lucky is 33% more damage in that situation as well. So that's a big deal, getting lucky. I think that it is mostly the Gladiator that benefits from that, but there's a bunch of stuff there. With returning projectiles, would it be worth allocating Vengeant Cascade with 150% increased projectile speed on returnings? I think the answer is no. Sixfold's asking, with the Locus Mines, they target you. That's awkward, isn't it? Yes, it is, but it's also manageable. You're getting so much of a payoff for it that the ability to just throw a bunch of them on the ground, then stand near the boss, and then detonate them is going to be a lot of damage. Like, you're going to get a lot of damage from that. You need to be confident with the boss's skills in order to do that effectively, though. Okay, so finally we come to Sadism Support. This is the one that I am least sold on. The upside on this is huge. Damaging ailments inflicted with supporting skills deal damage 79% faster. So let's talk about what 79% faster means. This means that if you deal damage if you deal damage at 10,000 damage per second with an ailment, and it's going to deal 50,000 damage before it expires. With this effect, you're going to deal 17,900 damage per second, but it's still going to expire after 50,000. After dealing 50,000 damage. So that's going to cut the duration. Then 80% less duration of ailments is even worse. I think that this is too much of a drawback. I think that this is something that the upside is there, but gutting 80% less duration on your ignites or your bleeds, you'd obviously never use this with poison. I think that 80% less is just unimaginably difficult to deal with, because one of the strengths of dealing ailments is that you can run away from a monster for a bit, and while you're running away from it, because, you know, it's doing a slam or whatever, then not only is that monster still taking damage, but it's also not regenerating life or it's not regenerating energy shield. Whereas with Sadism Support, let's say that you've got a boss that you've got to run away from for 3 seconds, and you just hit it with an ignite that's going to last for 600 milliseconds because of Sadism. Well, that's going to run out real quick. So I think that this is really, really, really dubious here. I think that Sadism Support is something that there will be use cases for this, because 79% faster is a lot, but there's a reason people don't use Rupture in the Deadeye Ascendancy very much. And that does exactly the same thing as Sadism Support, only for bleed, but it does exactly that. I think it's just not quite there. And exactly what someone is saying in chat, on Path of Building, Sadism Support is going to look god tier. This is going to be one of those trap nodes that's going to that people are going to pick in. Sorry, trap gems. People are going to pick this in Path of Building because Path of Building tells them it's the best option, and then they're going to play it, and their character's going to feel terrible. And the simple solution, And the simple solution to fixing their character is going to be remove Sadism Support. So I think that this is something you probably don't want to use outside corner cases. There will be corner cases for this. For instance, Val Earthquake Ignite, if anyone wants to do that, yes, Sadism Support, absolutely. But that is a very, very corner case setup. Most people are not going to want. Most people are not going to want this. And yeah, this is not going to be used. Crimson Dance definitely don't use with Sadism Support either. So this is not looking very good. Now, someone's mentioned in chat something that I was going to bring up, which is low tolerance, which is the poisons you inflict on non-poisoned enemies deal 300% increased damage. This is a medium cluster jewel node. This was something I was excited to use in conjunction with Sadism Support until I saw the numbers. Now I am not. I do not think that this is going to do enough for this to be, that this is going to be a good option here. So yeah, I think Sadism Support, I'm expecting this to see 0.1% use in this league because there will be genuine use cases for it. It's not a completely do nothing gem, but it is just not looking very good. And it has a lot of drawbacks to it. It doesn't add extra damage. You have to be hitting really fast. Now, one final thing I will call out with Sadism that is a potential use case for it. This is the one time that you want Soul Eater in conjunction with Ignite. So this is the one thing that makes Headhunter work on an Ignite build. And Headhunter become actually genuinely good for damage because the ridiculous attack speed you've got is going to be worthwhile. But is it worth it? No, I don't think so. So let's jump to Devour Support next. So Devour Support is looking like a pretty derisory thing. I think this is actually the one that is going to be zero use. Unless someone may prove me wrong on that. The quality bonus of 40% increased damage against enemies on low life is definitely not compelling to use it. But killing blows with supported skills consume corpses to recover 366 life and 40 mana. If this had been 366 life and 366 mana, then this was something Archmage could have used. As it is, it looked like from the video that they showed of this that there was a 29 frame delay between the monster dying and you recovering this life and mana, and I just can't see any use for this. This is going to be this is the only gem in this list that is complete trash. There's a few here that are really good, there's a few that are mediocre, but that will have uses. There's one that is bad but will have uses. Devour Support is just dumpster, I think. I hope someone proves me wrong, but even on a Culling Strike setup, I would much rather use Devouring Totem, and it's not like Devouring Totem has ever been popular, except in 321, when it was popular for entirely the wrong reasons. People hated Devouring Totem so much that they kept making it explode. That was basically the only use case for it. Now, let's talk about Fresh Meat Support next. So, minions from this get increased critical strike chance, and the text here is very important because it's difficult to parse. When you're reading this the first time, you're like, oh, this is giving 23.9% critical strike chance. Why do I really care? No. That Wakened Fury line that says plus 3.9% to critical strike chance, there's no increased line. This is base critical strike. So this is a tremendous amount of critical strike for the first 10 seconds of your permanent minions or for the first 10% of the duration of your temporary minions. I don't think this is any good on temporary minions at all, but I do think that this is really good. Someone has just pointed out that this has a use with if you just want to have consumed corpses for the pact. That is true, but still, there's better ways to do that. I think it's just, yeah, Devour is just not going to be there. So back on Fresh Meat, 3.9% base critical strike chance. It's really hard to get that much base crit on minions. So for a period, this is going to make your minion a killing machine, and then you can potentially summon a new one later. This is going to make them really strong for that first 10 seconds. There's also all the crit multi as well. So there's a lot going for this if you are willing to live with or automate the process of resummoning minions. I really need to see how this plays in practice. This is again going to be one of those gems that's going to look incredible in Path of Building, Probably almost as much so as Sadism Support. It's going to look absolutely phenomenal, but it may not play all that well in practice. I just need to check the duration on Summon Skeletons. That's going to be important. So Summon Skeletons is going to be a duration of 20 seconds baseline. So even if you scale it up a bit, you might get 4 or 5 seconds of them being uber. So there's that. I think the key thing with this is going to be in conjunction with minions that you are reconjuring often because you're causing them to explode with something. There's a bunch of ways that you can make your own minions explode for fun and profit, and that is potentially going to be one of the best uses here. So lots and lots of different things. Queen's Decree for Summon Skeletons is something that someone's pointed out, that one of those items that has been off my loot filter for so long that I'd forgotten it existed. Queen's Decree, minions have increased life, skeleton duration, of course, yep. So that is going to be really solid here. The problem with Queen's Decree is that it's coming at a huge opportunity cost. So you get +1 maximum number of skeletons, plus 200% duration, which then empowers you to use this new support gem well. But this is coming at the expense of having potentially 2 wands. Hey, Loopster, thank you for the super chat. May your Valobs have interesting results. So, fresh meat, I think this will have uses. This is not a trash gem, but it's not something that just goes into an existing build. And people are saying, yeah, if you can get it to last as long as Blessed Rebirth, there's a whole bunch of cool things you can do with this. Herald of Purity is a really interesting idea with Fresh Meat because that resummons them all the time. I think Herald of Purity actually says I think with Herald of Purity, it actually refreshes the duration, doesn't it? It summons a Sentinel of Purity. This skill will summon a Sentinel of Purity or refresh the duration and life of an existing one instead if you have the maximum number. So when you have the maximum number, it doesn't summon a new one. That effect is replaced by refreshing the duration, and I don't think it's going to work with that. And for minions with no duration, yes, this works, but it works for 10 seconds. So if the duration is forever, then 10% of forever is forever, but the maximum of 10 seconds overwrites that. So yeah, Herald of Purity is not going to work there. I don't think at least my reading of this is it doesn't work, unless GGG make an exception because they want Fresh Meat support to work with it. But the wording of it, it's going to be a dud. Likewise, it's not going to work well with Herald of Agony because when your Herald of Agony summons, you'll get 10 seconds, but that 10 seconds it's going to be dumpster tier, and then you're going to it's not the support that skill needs. Next, we have the interesting one here, which is that the Frigid Bond support. This is not scaling as well as Searing Bond, and for that reason, my one use case that I saw for this, which was getting level 35 on a Forbidden Shaco, and then just using a link, throwing a link into the Forbidden Shaco, not because you want to particularly be linked to anything, but because you can still link to an Animate Guardian. It's not going to die easily. That was the plan that I had, but that is unfortunately dead on arrival because Frigid Bond is just not providing what that needs. Frigid Bond would need to be scaling as much as Searing Bond does. So Searing Bond at character level set required 70 is 3,900 damage per second. Frigid Bond is dealing a little bit less than that, but at gem level 1, Frigid Bond was doing more than an equivalent level Searing Bond was. So that implies to me that the scaling on Frigid Bond is slower. And that means that I just don't think this is going to work for the meme build that I had in mind for it. That said, we'll see when the level 35 stats come out for this. In terms of using Frigid Bond properly, if you're interested in using link skills in a party, this is doing something. It's not complete rubbish, but it's just also not very good, I don't think. So yeah, there's a few interesting things. Corrupting Cry as a Shaco support also is definitely worth a look. I really want to see the level 35 gem stats, which will come out when the torrent goes up. So Friday my time, some of you are Americans, so Thursday for your time, GGG will put up the torrent. That usually goes up about 18 hours before league start. At that point, that is going to be when we'll be able to tell whether Frigid Bond in a Shaco or Corrupting Cry in a Shaco is going to be busted. I don't think it's going to be busted, but I think it might be good in both cases. Arakali Fang Spiders is an interesting question there. How does that work again? Arakali's Fang. Let's just bring that one up. It's Trigger Ray Spiders, and this is... Raise 2 Spectral Spiders from each nearby corpse that will attack your enemies with Viper Strike. Does it... Once you have a maximum... Yeah, they're new... Oh, base duration 30 seconds. Yeah, Arakali's Fang. Then again, like, you're getting critical strikes, which I don't think critical strikes really is the usual way people would scale this, but there's something interesting going on there, I think. Arakali's Fang Arakali's Fang and Fresh Meat, there's potential there, but I can't see the pieces to put together. 3 seconds isn't long, but you can scale out with skill effect duration. You wouldn't normally spec skill effect duration, but on an Arakali's Fang build, but... Oh, would you? Yeah, I need to think on that. I need to think on that. I need to test it out. I need to investigate all that stuff there. So, and you also do need a corpse as well, as people are saying, so that's an issue. You have to... So, you need to have a corpse to summon them from. So you can resummon, but you have to have a corpse that you can then summon from it. So that's something that's a bit tricky there. All right, let's have a quick look at Sacrifice Support. Now, Sacrifice Support is really, really, really big. This thing is hard to use. So supported spells sacrifice 20% your current life when you cast, and they gain added chaos damage equal to 44% of sacrificed life. Now, those of you in chat who have used the Covenant before know how much damage level 29 added chaos damage support gives you. That is what Sacrifice gives you if you have 5,400 current life. So if we bring up the stats on added chaos support, which I had open, I think, and I've gone and deleted them. I had them open, but anyways, added chaos damage support. You'll see that gem level 29, it's 377 to 565, so that is 470 average damage. To get 470 out of this, you need to be sacrificing 1,075 life, roughly, give or take. And to sacrifice that, you need sort of 5,500 life. The problem is that it's only sacrificing your current life total, not your maximum life total. And so you really need massive replenishment of life. I think that the best way to use this is a Blade Vortex. People have convinced me of that. And also, this is something you want to use, this is something that, how does this interact with things that you repeat? Because Blade Vortex often gets repeated. I feel like when you repeat a spell, this is just going to sacrifice once, isn't it? So yeah, this has a lot of potential here. In terms of using this in conjunction with Forbidden Rite builds generally don't pay much life. Broadly speaking, Forbidden Rite builds do not go and set themselves up so that they take negligible damage from the backlash from their own Forbidden Rite. I was playing around with Forbidden Rite in 3.21, and I probably went a bit further than you should, but I was taking only 1% of the base damage of Forbidden Rite because I was using 4th Vow. Now, 4th Vow is probably overkill, but I had 90% chaos resistance and 4th Vow on top of that. So that was basically 99% damage mitigation for chaos hits up to about 5,000 base damage from chaos. I would have 99% mitigation on. Now, Relic of the... So, self-cast Dark Pact Poison written all over it. Yeah, I like that setup, actually. I think I really like that with Poison on Dark Pact. Because the thing with Sacrifice, because it's adding chaos damage, the best way to scale it is still going to be Poison. Yes, Poison is worse this league because Temporal Chains' interaction with Poison is being weakened, but it's still going to be fine because Poison was so strong that that'll still be solid. And I think there is definitely an occultist build there. You just need to have tremendous life recovery. And you also can't use recoup effectively. You're going to need to find some pretty spectacular life recovery to make Sacrifice Support work. So this is going to be a very difficult setup. My understanding for how this will work with Blade Vortex is that you will cast it and it will... you'll just have to sacrifice life multiple times, I think. But yeah, I think this is going to be something for skills you don't spam as well. So again, that's why Blade Vortex is coming up the most. Blade Vortex is something that you cast a couple of times and then it's going at full power. Interactions with Dissolution of the Flesh have come up. This is going to be very good in conjunction with Dissolution of the Flesh, but you are still going to need to recover your life again. So you'll have Dissolution of the Flesh, Sacrifice Support, and something like Dissolution of the Flesh, and yeah, like this could be... Let's just have a quick think with Wrathpinth. Actually, while this topic has come up, let's bring up Wrathpinth Globe. Wrathpinth Globe is the other thing that makes you sacrifice a lot of life. Now, this provides you with a tremendous spell damage % and critical strike chance. So Wrathpinth does a very large amount here. You're sacrificing 10% of your life as well as 20% of your life with Sacrifice Support. And they're probably going to be in order with each other. But if you've got Dissolution of the Flesh, this doesn't actually imperil you. This doesn't bring you closer to death, because it's just going to mean that your life total is going to drop down. There's a bunch of ways you could try to recover life. Everything from the Agnostic, Eternal Youth. There's a whole lot of things you can do, but Recoup is not going to work on Sacrifice Life. So there's a bunch of things that are worth thinking. Let's bring up... this doesn't support skills that self-repeat generally. So it doesn't work with channeling skills, doesn't work with Vile skills, doesn't work with traps or mines, doesn't work with brands, and doesn't work with orbs. Also cannot be used to modify the skills of minions. It can work with totems, but it's pretty bad with totems. I think with totems, it's generally going to be worse than having a level 20 added chaos damage support. And if you're going to use added chaos support, you'd use awakened added chaos. It's usually not that expensive. Can you low life this skill? I don't... you might be in a situation where you can fire off Forbidden Rite twice with Sacrifice Support. And so you're at 100% life. You fire off Forbidden Rite twice. You're now at low life. And then the Forbidden Rite projectiles impact while you're at low life. I think that works. Or does it... Yeah, whether your Pain Attunement is based upon the time the damage is dealt. So there's a whole lot of things you can do there. This is going to be completely bricked with Chaos Inoculation because the amount of life you're going to sacrifice is 0. So you're sacrificing 0 life and you're getting 0 added chaos damage with it. So there's a whole lot of options, but life recharge you're going to really need a lot of life. I think and with so just to clarify how Petrified Blood works. 50% or 55%, whatever your low life threshold is, you can't recover above that except with life flasks. But life flasks will take you to 100% life. And then that's going to be a messy setup. And this is based upon your current life. So if you're at low life, it's like if you're at low life when you cast the spell, it's not going to be great. This is super clunky. You could do this. You could have Petrified Blood active, life flask up to 100%, then cast a couple of spells with Sacrifice Support, and until you're back down to low life. You could do that, but I think it's just too clunky. So this is going to be very difficult. And Recoup only works for damage that you've taken. It's not, you can't recoup life that you've fed to it. People are asking about using this in some sort of spellcast loop. I'm sure there'll be some sort of loop, but this is not damage. Sacrifice life is not damage, so Sacrifice Support is not going to be used in order to set off a loop. What Sacrifice Support might allow you to do is if you need to spend more life, if you need to lose life faster for some weird reason, you could throw that in there, but it's not going to be the option. So lots of messy things, but like people are saying, Petrified Blood with Dissolution of the Flesh is probably probably the way to use this, but you still need to recover life. You still need to have some sort of massive life recovery, and you're going to be needing to use flasks if you're using Petrified Blood. If you're not using Petrified Blood, you can just get back with Life Leech to 100% life, but if you're using life flasks, it's a mess. So this is going to be very, very messy. Dark Pact is probably the way to go with poison. Or alternately, let's go hipster here. Zerfie's Heart. So let's bring up Zerfie's Heart, because this is an item that everyone always forgets exists, and it is a really cool item. Chaos damage that you inflict can chill, it can shock, but most importantly, it can ignite. Chaos damage you inflict can ignite means that you could potentially do this as an ignite build, and you could also do this as an elementalist, and then just get a tremendous amount of extra damage. Even though that damage is chaos damage, then becomes igniting, and then you can proliferate that damage through screens. This may actually be the way to go with this. Sacrifice Support, Zerfie's Heart, lots of chaos damage. Not Forbidden Rite. Forbidden Rite's not the right spell for this. You would want to have something with a high effectiveness of added damage. Fireball's one of the highest in the game. The very highest is Vile Flame Blast, Vile Firestorm, but that's not allowable because you can't support Vile skills with this. But there's a whole bunch of things that you could ignite with and throw a huge amount of life into. You can't do this with channeling skills, unfortunately, so that takes out a number of the other highest damage skills, but there's a bunch of cool, weird stuff that you've got. So people are saying you don't need Life Flask with Dissolution of the Flesh and Petrified Blood. You do need a Life Flask, because with Petrified Blood, you're going to only go to 55%, and then when you apply Sacrifice Support, you're going to be sad because you're going to lose... You're only going to be getting 55% of the benefit of Sacrifice Support. The only way to get to 100% life with Petrified Blood is through the use of a Life Flask. There's no other way in the game, and so Sacrifice Support's going to be a poor choice if you're not using that setup. Wave of Conviction does do a lot of damage, yes. A Wave of Conviction is 310% base damage, so that's going to work well with Sacrifice Support and an Ignite Elementalist, and that's something that could be quite solid. Impending Doom, what's the base damage on that again? Impending Doom, I think, is quite high, and Hex Blast as well. Impending Doom is 370%, same as Fireball, but it's got one less support gem, so that's going to be an option, yes. Doom Blast. And what's the other one that people are saying? Hex Blast as well. Hex Blast has already got the ability to inflict all the ailments you want, and this does 340%. Yeah, I kind of feel Hex Blast might be the way to go here. Hex Blast, Sacrifice. This is super clunky, but if you hex something, then you Hex Blast it with Sacrifice. That is just going to do a ridiculous amount of damage. It's got the capacity to ignite already, and that's going to do 40% more damage with ailments as well. Yeah, Hex Blast. Hex Blast is the way to use this. If you're willing to put up with Clunk and you just want a ridiculous amount of damage, that's the way to go. That is the way to go there. Oh, that's a good point. Do you cast Doom Blast? You don't. Yeah, thank you for the clarification in chat. Doom Blast, you're not casting, you are triggering, I believe. It's not something you cast. So no, that's correct. Hex Blast. Hex Blast is the answer. If you want to use Sacrifice Support, it's a weird version of Hex Blast, but it should work. Ignite Discharge is another one as well. Yep. And that's going to get a tremendous amount of chaos damage, so that's another good point. Yep. So all these options, there's a lot of ways. And actually, you could use Discharge with as few as 1 charges, couldn't you? Like, because so much of the damage is coming from your life, I'm just going to confirm that I'm right. I remember Discharge as being 600%, and yeah, 600% effectiveness of added damage. Even if you've got very few charges, Discharge is going to work really well with this. You do need to have some. I don't think you can cast Discharge without them, but that's another good option for it as well. So lots of things you can do with this. Sacrifice and, like, as people are saying, like, the setups with Dissolution of the Flesh, Eternal Youth, Agnostic, there's a lot of ways that you can recover your life. So there's a lot of stuff you can do with this. Discharge AoE would be small, would it? Does Discharge scales AoE? It's 20% increase per charge consumed. I'm trying to think what the best way to do this would be. you want to get a number. You want to have a reliable recovery of a charge. You could do this on a Juggernaut, or you could. I feel like it's too cute to use Doedre's Elixir in this, because that's something that can give you a bunch of charges on demand, but is also something you can't reliably use very often. It's one per 40 or so monsters that you kill. So there's a bunch of things. On the question of Guardian's Blessing and Golemancer, I mentioned Golems and auto resummon in a previous video on these. I mostly went into Mark of the Stitch Demon with it on an Animate Guardian. I think that's the main use case for it. But there's a bunch of things you can do. Okay, well that is Sacrifice Support. Let's get to the big one. Let's get to Spellblade Support, because these numbers are so much higher than I expected. This is looking really, really, really strong. Spellblade Support is just so much higher in numbers than I thought. So let's start with what the opportunity cost is of electing to use Spellblade Support. You are giving up another support gem. That's a 35 to 39% more multiplier. You are giving up 2 gem levels that you would have had on your main hand one-handed weapon, and you are giving up a bench crafted 60% increased spell damage roll. That's likely what you have as your prefixes on a good spellcaster weapon. In exchange for this, you are getting 135% of the weapon. Now, Hion's Fury is something that I had open and I've gone and closed. So let's just bring it up as Hion's Fury as one example of something you might use here. In exchange for this, you're getting 1 to 600 lightning damage. And this is just a starter weapon. You can do much better than this. Now, Energy Blade is the extreme thing, but so you're losing two gem levels versus using you're losing 2 gem levels and a support gem. So that's sort of about a 70% more multiplier you need to get. So what you need is for 1 to 600 lightning damage, 300 flat lightning damage, to be more damage than you would get from that benefit instead. So 1 to 300 lightning damage to spells is going to be 300 lightning damage to spells is going to be 405 lightning damage to spells. And let's use Wave of Conviction as an example here. Wave of Conviction is going to be, let's assume that your gem level is 20 currently. So your 300 damage is going to be scaled to 405 by the gem. Then Wave of Conviction has 330%. So your 405 damage is going to be 1320, the amount of lightning damage you're going to get roughly. A little bit more than that because there's a 5 as well, 1350. So going from gem level 20 to gem level 23, like this is like getting 4 gem levels. It's 4 or 5 gem levels. It feels like even with Hion's Fury, it makes Hion's Fury competitive with a +2 wand. So that's the setup here at gem level 20. If you have something better than a +2 wand, you're going to need a better weapon than Hion's Fury to compete with it. But I do think that this is definitely something that's real. Spellblade is very, very real. Now, Ephemeral Edge will not work. That is correct. Someone in chat is raising Ephemeral Edge as something to think of. Energy Blade is going to be where it really kicks in, though. So let's go to Energy Blade just so that we can bring that up. It's one of those really weird skills that we need to quickly remind everyone what it does. So the buff nerfs your energy shield by 50%, and in exchange for that, it grants you lightning damage that is minimum 2% of your energy shield plus a flat amount, maximum 40% your energy shield plus a flat amount. The flat amount's actually pretty big as well. So 21% of your energy shield, but that's after this 50% nerf, so 10.5% energy shield plus this, plus 100 or so. If your character has 6,000 energy shield, which you can get without ridiculous investment, remember Energy Blade's going to need to have other defenses, then this is going to be 600 and something lightning damage. It's just off the charts. Like the amount of damage you're getting here is incredible. You're then going to get 135% of this, which is going to be crazy. And then it's going to be times 330% because Wave of Conviction has that baseline damage. Ultimately, this is going to do tremendous damage. And the energy blades, it is actually on the weapons. So Ephemeral Edge is not base damage on the weapon, but energy blade it is. So also people are talking about how in chat that gem level bonuses don't work on Impending Doom either. So there's a whole bunch of really crazy stuff that's going on here. This looks really strong, but at the expense of making you a glass cannon. The energy blade setup with Spellblade is a glass cannon setup. Now, in terms of weapons that are really nuts with this, Rebuke of the Vaal is the obvious one. This is something that you probably want to use in conjunction with the Original Sin. If you've got the Original Sin, then this is going to add, what is it? It's like, what's the average amount of damage that this is adding? So it's 150 to 240. It's something like 150 to 240. That's 190 of each element, and no, sorry, it's not that much. It's 95 of each element. It's adding 95 of each element. A little bit more than that for the... Am I counting that right? 150, 240... Yeah, it's 95 of each element, but it's a little bit more for lightning, interestingly. So this is going to give you something like 450 flat damage, which is crazy. So there's a whole bunch of stuff there. Now, my first thought with this was Original Sin. Someone else has mentioned in chat that Shaper of Flames is an option for Rebuke of the Vaal. All sorts of things you can do with this. Rebuke of the Vaal is going to be somewhat of a chase item this league. Now, I believe Rebuke of the Vaal is a tier 2 rarity unique. And I'm just going to confirm that, see if there's if the team of people who have been doing some research into that have got confirmation. No, it looks like it might be tier 3. They haven't had it from a ritual yet, so it's not verified, and it's a line ball case. They've got 10 of it. They got 10 of the item in, so they can't rule out that it's tier 2, but it's probably tier 3, at least in 321. So Rebuke of the Vaal is actually something that's affordable. The reason that you're a glass cannon, Hamad is asking in chat, why does using the energy blade setup make you a glass cannon? The issue is that you need to invest heavily in energy shield, and at the same time you're using something that reduces your energy shield by 50%. That's the problem there. Lead Sprinkler doesn't work. Any weapon that says, like, essentially the way you can tell on a weapon in game is look at the text that's above the line. That's the damage that's going to get added. So physical damage, Rebuke of the Vaal in game actually lists all of the damage types above the line, so it does work. But something like Brutus's Lead Sprinkler, it says above the line, it just has its physical damage, I think. And then below the line, it adds X to Y fire damage per 10 strength. So Brutus's Lead Sprinkler, it's not reflected above the line because it's variable, and therefore it doesn't work. Energy Blade is variable, but the Energy Blades have it above the line. That's the reason that it's so good. And so there's a lot of really, really interesting stuff. Solrith is asking where you can see the information about what rarity tier everything is. I'm going to put the spreadsheet here, but fair warning, this is a work in progress. This is not my baby, this spreadsheet, and it's also a work in progress. So there's a whole lot of complexity, but what you want is to find in column G the name of the unique, then check estimated tier for which is in column I. That's what you're looking for if you want to find those tiers. I'm not guaranteeing it's right, but it often is. It's based on people who have teamed up and found and looted and recorded 23,000 unique items, then done some verification on it. So there's a whole bunch of interesting stuff that you could use with it, but I think that the best use case for this support gem is going to be Energy Blade, if you're willing to go all in on being a glass cannon. If you're not willing to go all in on being a glass cannon, it's going to be Rebuke of the Vaal in conjunction with a character that can make use of all of that damage. Whether that be through the use of Original Sin, like I was thinking, whether it be through the use of Shaper of Flames, as other people have been saying. Spellblade support definitely is going to be really good. The numbers on this are just higher than I was expecting. And it is the case that, yeah, there is sometimes a case where the another gem comes out ahead. Winds of Fate has come up in discussion a little bit. Winds of Fate is very hard to use. And also, it doesn't work with Spellblade because Spellblade is one-handers. So for Spellblade in general, it doesn't work. And if you do want to use it with Battle Mage, which you can get on an Inquisitor, and that's the other thing we need to talk about with this. We'll come to Battle Mage in a sec. With Battle Mage support, Winds of Fate can work, but you need to overcome the drawback of not dealing damage with non-crits. And the way you usually do that is using Plume of Pursuit, which is that unique helmet from Jannar the Omen. That's the way that you make that work, but it is a mess. It is a difficult thing to get going, but it is potentially very strong. And we will go and have a quick look at the Guardian Relic stuff in a sec, but I am no expert on minions, so I'll just have a quick look at it. Other weapons you would consider using here, I think, so there's Essentia Sanguis is good. High-On's Fury is basic, but it will get the job done for early league progression. I think High-On's Fury will be used a lot more than it has been in recent leagues, just because, especially before you have level 20 gems, flat damage is miles better. Before your gems are level 20, flat damage is just much better than it is later. That's why, for instance, when you're leveling through the axe, a level appropriate flat damage to spells is way better than a +1 wand. Way better. Way, way, way better. And people are talking about level 35 on this gem could be OP. I'm not sure on that. Volcanis is very good, yes. Volcanis has a lot of damage on it. And also Mjolnir, from memory, has a lot of damage. The other thing that's interesting with this, Arakali's Fang has solid damage too. Arakali's Fang has enough damage to matter, and also has its own unique abilities, that I can see Arakali's Fang being something that people might try and play around with this support. They probably won't end up using it forever, but it's something that does something really interesting. Yeah, that is correct. I've put a link down in the description of this stream to that Reddit thread that's happening. Like, I don't want to jump over to Reddit on the stream because it will flashbang people horribly, but definitely go and have a look at that. There's a lot for it. The Intelligence Stacking Claw has come up again. So all of the stat stacking stuff, whether it be Brutus's Lead Sprinkler, whether it be Hand of Wisdom in Action or Hand of Thought in Motion, I can't remember which one it is now, none of these work in conjunction with it. All of those, the damage is not part of the weapon's damage. It is additional damage the weapon gets when it's hitting, and this doesn't count here. So let's go and have a look at the Guardian stuff now as well. So that's something that we've got coming up in the recently asked questions was updated. This has all the Guardian information on it. And so we've got here something that's notable. Tattoos can be removed. That's something I thought we all expected would happen, but the interaction with Timeless Jewels is as people expected. So the ones that conquer completely destroy the tattoos, or they destroy the effect of the tattoos. And can we get more info about the Guardian minions? So people are saying these look phenomenal. The minions level is equal to yours up to a maximum of 85. That's how they fixed that problem. Now this is on a character that is level 85 and that has no minion related stuff allocated, I believe is what they said. Elemental Relics. Summon minions, explode on death, dealing 100% of their maximum life as damage of their chosen elements. That's a lot. That is a lot, because these minions at level 85 have 19,416 life. Wow. So this is going to... summoned elemental relics are basically going to be... You're going to set up a nuke. That nuke is going to go off 5 seconds later, and it is going to... 19,416 base damage is ridiculous. Granted, you can't buff that further with supports, but that is really, really noticeable. That's crazy. That is absolutely nuts. Corsica, I don't use dark mode because I use old Reddit. Old Reddit doesn't have dark mode, and it's you can force dark mode in Chrome, but if I force dark mode in Chrome, that's going to then shut down all of my browser tabs. It's kind of messy. Can we scale up the damage? And yeah, depending on the aura that's summoned, it'll have depending on the element that's chosen, it'll have an aura. but you can only have... How many of these can you have simultaneously? You can only have one of each of the three. And... Ooh, yeah, so you can get all three auras on you. We don't know what level those auras are that I know of, unless there's something that allows that. Yeah, so it's something that's sort of difficult to work out there. Summon Sentinel of Radiance is the other one. But yeah, Summon Elemental Relics look really strong. Like, that's... The... Losing 11 mana every now and again because of the summon is going to be impactful. Like, that's going to trigger a lot. But these are going to be just nukes when they explode. They're going to provide you a buff. Yeah, Summon Elemental Relics, they look really good. Summon Sentinel of Radiance, which follows you and attacks enemies in melee while burning enemies around it and taking a portion of damage from hits from you. You can only have one of these things. Minion deals base fire damage equal to 30% of its max life per second to enemies in a radius of 30. So that's a small radius righteous fire around it. And that's a lot of base damage. But you can't buff it with very much, so that's going to mostly tickle. 100% chance to taunt on hit. That's going to be tricky because it's an uncontrolled taunt. And it's going to happen when you're not ready for it sometimes. It is inherently strong to taunt monsters, but also inherently dangerous. So if, for instance, you're fighting... Izaro is where it comes up the most. You often slightly reposition to dodge his slams, but if the Summon Sentinel of Radiance taunts him at the wrong time, he might target it instead of you, and you might reposition into the slam instead. So be aware of that. 10% of damage is taken from minions' life instead of you. And yeah, I'm not so sold on the Radiant Sentinel. It's good, but it's not amazing. But the Elemental Relics look absolutely crazy. It looks like you can have one of each type in Rage Monkey. I believe that's the case. Hey, Chris. Hey, Chaz. Thanks for the super chat there. Volatility Support does indeed look very good for Voltaxic Rift, and I missed that one. So that's going to be really strong. Yeah. You're going to need to be hitting fast. So you're only 1 in 12 to summon the... If you're missing a particular relic and you're hitting a rare or unique enemy, you're only 1 in 12 to summon the one that you're missing on any given hit that you make. And that means that if you're hitting at a speed of like 3 attacks per second, then your uptime is actually not going to be as high as it might intrinsically feel. It's going to be... it's going to be like... Let me just have a look what your downtime would be. E to the power of negative 1.25, isn't it? Your downtime, I believe, is going to be of the order 28% if you're attacking at 3 APS. Well, if you're hitting at 3 APS. If you're hitting at less than 3 APS, your downtime on any particular relic is going to be fairly high. The big question is what the level of the auras is. So Marcos is asking what the Ali relic does except explode. It provides an aura. Notice the second line here. Depending on the element chosen, it will have an anger, hatred, or wrath aura. We don't know the tiers of those yet. Yeah, this looks really strong, honestly. Like, it's... You're going to need to figure out a way... Oh, yeah, the cooldown time is 0.3 seconds on the summon. No, that's fine, Siddharth. So you don't need cooldown reduction because you only need to resummon every 5 seconds. So that means that let's say you're hitting every 0.25 seconds. So you hit once, your next hit, you then have no potential to summon a relic if the last one summoned. But if the last one didn't summon, then you do summon one. So it's going to be really good. Nictor's Lantern is another good thing for Spellblade as well. On you or a nearby ally as well, yes. So there's a lot of good stuff there. So this is, yeah, like just having 2 of those auras up at a time is going to be quite solid. You'll have them up most of the time. I think that this looks strong. Like the Guardian is looking like it's in a better place than we thought beforehand. And Relic and Sentinel can proc more relics. Yeah, the relics can't proc each other except from their on death explosion. I don't think. They don't seem to be doing any attacks, unless there is some sort of attack that they have that's not mentioned here. If you're firing off sparks, and you're hitting rares and uniques, yeah, you're gonna have 100% uptime with Spark in many situations. So yeah, I think this is definitely good, but if it's level 1 auras, it's a lot weaker than if it's level 21 auras. And I don't know if that's been clarified anywhere, but even if it's level 1, this is probably still usable just for hatred, because you'll have your hatred uptime might be 85% with this, and that's going to be fine. That's also then going to change the way that you value, auras on your character. You don't want to put different ones on. I think a Guardian's going to be more defensive, like consistent defense and inconsistent offense is going to be the Guardian's niche as an aura bot, whereas the Ascendant will still be there to provide the more consistent all-around setup, and the Champion will be there for the budget setup, and you can also play aura supports on weird things. I also think that the Guardian's in a good spot to pull in the Hierophant node that provides 30% more mana, 30% increased mana. You pull that in, and then have a different setup on a Guardian that's more of the Mana Guardian setup as well. So lots of cool stuff that you can do there. It is confirmed, I believe, that Spellblade double dips with the Battle Mage. However, if you already have Battle Mage, I feel like you might not get as much out of it, because there's only additive stacking between Battle Mage and Spellblade support, and at that point you might find that you're better off dropping Spellblade support and instead using a gem that multiplies your damage instead. So I feel like that's something to at least consider. You want to run the numbers on that. Spellblade will stack with Battle Mage, but I feel like the best use for Spellblade is on Ascendancies that can't get Battle Mage with any means other than Cadigan's Crown. And Cadigan's Crown just generally doesn't work. It's just generally not a good item. Although, maybe you could use Cadigan's Crown for extra flat damage if you were using Rebuka the Vaal on a Wave of Conviction. So there's a bunch of options. I think at this point, let's start to wind up the stream with a recap of everything, and then we'll do a quick final burst of Q&A, and then I'm going to go get some lunch, and then we can think a bit further on these, and I can read up some of the numbers threads that have been posted on Reddit myself, and we can then formulate some further thoughts. So, Controlled Blaze support. This is really good in some situations. The numbers on this are phenomenal. The numbers on this are much higher than I thought. However, if you are hitting multiple targets simultaneously, it's not going to perform very well. This is going to be a tricky gem to use well. You want to be attacking for single target approximately 3 to 3.25 times a second. And the sweet spot is actually 3.25. That's a perfect spot where you get the most damage out of this. But in practice, Control Blaze is going to shut off and crangle your damage when you have to dodge. So if you have to pull out of a fight for a sec and dodge, you're then going to have to ramp up again. So this is a very powerful gem against a training dummy, and it is a weaker gem in the real world, but it is so good in the training dummy scenario that it's still probably a good gem anyway. This is good enough to use, this is good enough to build around, but it is not an S tier gem like something else we'll get to in a sec. Corrupting Cry. The duration of the Corrupting Blood is too short, so you are going to need to be donking things on the head. You're not just going to be inflicting this with War Cries, you're going to need to be exerting attacks as well. But those exerted attacks don't need to do much damage, they just need to hit a lot of area. And Corrupting Cry looks pretty good overall. The scaling on it seems pretty good. It's higher than Corrupting Blood. It has a massive cost and reservation multiplier, so your War Cries with it are going to either cost a lot of life or a lot of mana, whichever way you're casting them. But the payoff is there as long as you are attacking as well. This is not something to use without slams. Flame Ward is something that we really need to try in action. I'm intending to test this with Searing Bond and the Chieftain. The Chieftain node, Arongi, the Moon's Presence node, that causes your totems to taunt for 4 seconds. I think this could be really strong as an alternative way to build Righteous Fire, but I'm not going to guarantee that. It's something I want to try. Guardian's Blessing, this is phenomenal with Mask of the Stitch Demon and an Animate Guardian. Absolutely phenomenal. It is good on an Elementalist Golem, Elementalist with the automatic resummoning of Golems, and it is just, the numbers on it are really good. 32% increased aura effect, no need to be Eldritch Battery to spend 900 mana every few seconds on a Blessing. This is really strong, but it is not for every build. It is good though. Trauma Support. This is pretty safely designed to avoid the most powerful use cases, except for one, and that is the Realm of the Caged God, or whatever it is, the staff that gives increased damage, increased physical attack damage per 10 strength. That is going to be the best use case for Trauma Support. There will be builds around that. There will also be builds that try to use it in other ways. This is a gem that will fall off. This will be very, very good at league start. But once you go from having a bad one-handed weapon to having a good two-handed weapon, you're just going to swap to Bone Shatter and not use Trauma Support. At least that's my thoughts. Volatility Support is S tier on builds that are dealing lightning damage with attacks, and on builds that are dealing physical damage with attacks and using Rizlatha's Coil, and especially if you are a duelist, so that you can use Forbidden Jewels to get the whatever the name of that node is, that Violent Retaliation from the Gladiator Ascendancy. The one that causes you, if you have blocked in the last 20 seconds, which is not that hard a condition to meet, then your physical damage is lucky with attacks. That is incredible. So there is a lot there. Corrupting Cry makes it cost life, you're saying there. So let me just... Oh yeah, supported skills cost life instead of mana. You don't need life top. Ah, thank you for the clarification on that, Alpha. I had missed that. Pillar of the Caged God was the item for Trauma Support. You got the name there. But yeah, this is one of those cases where the Trauma Support's not being able to be used on bows because Doomfletch exists, can't be used on swords because Voidforge exists, can't be used on unarmed because Facebreaker exists. That's the reason that it's worded so carefully. But it's still good, and Pillar of the Caged God is the primary use case for it. Volatility Support is looking just really, really good in general. Not for every build. Don't use it if your build is doing mostly cold-based skills or fire-based skills. But if your skills initially deal lightning damage, and that includes if you further convert them later, then you'll get a lot out of this, because they'll generally be 1 to 100 or close to 1 to 100 type damage. So 69% less of 1, who cares? 58% more of 100, amazing. If you can make your damage lucky, which is hard to do now, then you'll get a lot out of this. That can be by being allied to someone who's using Pericle's Toe. It can be done by being... it can be done by having the Esh Amulet. There's a couple of ways of doing it, but it's really good. And yeah, Trauma Stacking and Frost Breath is another thing that's quite solid as well. There's a lot of things there. So for this, you're saying can't be used with... Oh yeah, can't be used in conjunction with Bone Shatter. That's a good point. So you would have to start with a different skill. It can't be used with Bone Shatter. That's a good point. I missed that line entirely. So thanks, chat. Locus Mine. The stats on this are fantastic. The damage projection on it is terrible. This is a boss killing thing. You're going to use this as a supplement for builds that are primarily clearing with Mirage Archer, I think. This is going to be one of those things. You're primarily a Mirage Archer character, but you have Locus Mine set up in your bow so that you've got your main skill in your chest that you're killing monsters with, but then when you're fighting a boss, throw down those Locus Mines, stand on top of the boss if you can do so safely. Not always able to do that, but if you can do so, fire off Locus Mine, throw them quite some way away, let them fire back at you, and boom, they'll kill everything. The damage on this is incredible compared to what you got with compared to what you get with other things, but you do need to have unreserved mana to use this, and that's the difficult thing with Locus Mine. You need to have quite a bit of mana unreserved, otherwise you're not going to be able to fit this into builds, and I think a lot of people won't use this because they would rather have an extra aura and deal with bosses just by dealing more damage because they've got an extra aura. The 30 distance thing is also something that needs to be mentioned. You need to be you need to be throwing them quite a way away from you for that to work, but that's easily managed. Returning projectile support, numbers on this are not great. It looks really good. It's 39% more damage in theory. The problem is that in practice, in the real world, sometimes a boss will move or a boss will force you to move. And so this is a bit worse than a 39% more damage support gem. It's still good. You're probably still going to use it, but it's not amazing. And I think I was hoping that this would be 51% less damage instead of 61. Then it would be definitely a very good gem. As it is a viable choice without being extraordinary. Sadism Support, I think this is mostly dead on arrival. The 80% less duration is too much for most use cases. It's not that there's no use cases at all, but it's going to be something that has a use case there in a lot of situations. In a few niche situations. This is not a good support gem, but it'll be the support gem that some specific build needs because they've got a long duration ignite or whatever, and they just want to burn down bosses faster. All in all, disappointed with this one. Devour Support, I feel like this is dead on arrival. I think there's better ways to consume corpses if you're a Necromancer, and that I don't even want this on a Culling Strike setup. If I wanted to go to that effort, I would drop a Devouring Totem instead. Also, the 28 frame delay between the monster dying and the corpses being consumed that we saw on the video. Haven't seen anything convincing me that that's not there. That's a long time in PathOfExile. So this is the one support that basically doesn't exist. Fresh Meat Support, this has a bunch of niche uses. 3.9% critical strike chance is not 3.9% increase crit. This is 3.9% base crit, the way that that's worded. So that is very, very, very good. You then get the extra 20% in crit. This is a lot. This is going to be used in conjunction with long duration minions, so permanent minions like zombies and the like, I think. I feel like you could try and do cute things with this and medium duration minions, but I don't think that's necessarily going to work for a lot of people. You're going to want to use this with long duration or infinite duration minions and just get something out of them. Especially if those minions automatically kill themselves and automatically resummon. If you can make them do that, then they're even better. Frigid Bond support does not scale up as fast as I'd hoped it would. It does not scale as quickly as Searing Bond does, and therefore I don't see this being as ridiculous with Forbidden Shaco as I thought it would be. Corrupting Cry also is good on Forbidden Shaco though. It will still be good with Forbidden Shaco. If you see a level 35 Frigid Bond Forbidden Shaco, you should probably build around it, but I wouldn't say that this is something that you should have a live search up all league for because it's going to be God tier. I think it will just be a strong option. Sacrifice Support is very, very good, and you can do this a few different ways. Probably the best thing we came up with was Self-Cast Dark Pact Poison, but you can do this with a bunch of different things and you will get a large chunk of extra life, but you're going to have a lot of difficulty with replenishing your life. Even if you are using this with Dissolution of the Flesh, which you probably would, you're still going to need to refill your life total. It also does not work very well in conjunction with low life effects because it's sacrificing 20% of your current life, not of your maximum life. And as a result, you're going to then, if your maximum life pool, say you're using a full-on Dissolution of the Flesh setup for life, if your maximum, and you're stacking life by every means possible, you get like 15,000 life with that. But if you're at low life, you're at 7,500, and you're not getting as much from Sacrifice Support. If you do use a Life Flask to get back up to 15,000 life, then you can do then you can cast some absolutely massive skills with Sacrifice, but you're then going to need to use a Flask specifically in order to regain that. You're not going to get it from other means. So Sacrifice Support is really good. If you've got 5,500 maximum life and you're at full life, this is comparable to the damage bonus you get from the Covenant from level 29 added chaos damage. So it is really good, but it's really hard to use. You've got to have a tremendous amount of life recovery, whether that be from Eternal Youth, whether it be from the Agnostic, whether it be from, I think it's Amessian, from memory, has a lot of life recovery. I'd have to check that. There's a few things you can do to recover life, but you're going to have to do a lot of it because this thing's going to be draining you really, really fast. Then we have Spellblade Support, which is generically very good in conjunction with a few specific unique weapons, or with an elemental damage, or with a tri-element crafted claw. I think tri-element crafted weapons are probably going to be the best use case here. It is phenomenal, however, with Energy Blade. This is a softcore only build, but it is absolutely phenomenal. Sacrifice for Totems, I think, is not very good. I would rather just put in level 20 added chaos. Will do more. And added chaos support is not that good an option there. Just going to have so the way that totems work, just a quick clarification on that because it does come up a lot, this question. Totems now have an amount of life. They've always had an amount of life that's based upon the gem level of the skill that summons the totem, or the gem level of the support gem that summoned the totem in the case of Spell Totem and a couple of other similar supports. But at the end of 3.15, when the Forbidden Rite totems build was absolutely dominant, GGG changed the way they work. The totems have 80% damage reduction against damage that's not inflicted by them themselves, and 80% less life. So this means that Forbidden Right totems, Righteous Fire totems are just wrecked. They're basically not very much life, and there is still some life on them, but it's like of the order 15, 1600, and I think you'll find that added chaos level 18, 19, 20, it'll be that sort of level that Sacrifice would add on a totem. Not very much. Hex Blast looks phenomenal with Sacrifice as well, but this is going to be a hard build to make work. You're going to need to throw a Hex, then you're going to need to fire off your Hex Blast, but in exchange for that, you are going to get a staggering amount of damage that's going to be able to ignite, and you're going to be able to also have the bonus of freezing as well sometimes. So if a monster's tough, you might freeze it and then kill it off. That looks like it's got a lot of potential there. So Sacrifice on Hex Blast, definitely looking good. Spellblade support is just phenomenal in general. And that's all of the new gems. There's all stuff that was updated. We'll just have a quick look if there's anything that was unexpected. So Orb was added to Cremation, which is a severe nerf for a lot of things. You can only have one Orb active at a time, so I'll just see how that plays. But I think that Cremation is like really quite seriously nerfed with that, but I'm willing to be proven wrong. Temp Chains is severely nerfed for Poison. It's still very good. We have the damage changes here to... changes to Whirling Blades, which is, 75, it's just changed the way that it works with dual wield. That's all. Ruthless Support now works with Ignite. That's interesting. Combustion Support is getting... it's getting changes to its... Of course, I remember they mentioned that in the patch notes and I'd forgotten about it. Combustion Support is being buffed for players who are in the Marauder area of the tree. They're changing the stat balance on it. So instead of being 100% int support, 100% int gem, it is now a 60% int, 40% strength gem, which is generally a buff. Impending Doom does not work on Sacrifice, unfortunately. So Impending Doom is not something you cast, and so I don't believe that works with it. You don't cast the spell, and I don't think that Impending Doom... I don't think that when you cast the Hex itself, it's going to work. We'll have to test that one out. All stuff about Cremation, I'm just going to have to say I can't answer those questions at the moment. I'm really not sure what's going on with that. Sacrifice flat out doesn't work with Relic of the Pact. Sacrifice is unable to be used on channeling skills, and even though Relic of the Pact builds often are set up in a way that they can only channel one stack, at least the current ones, there's a potential for new Relic of the Pact builds this patch with the 1% reservation tattoos. The existing builds don't want that tattoo, but the existing builds they can use. They can't use it, even though they're casting Relic of the Pact as a one-shot skill. It is still a channeling skill, even though they don't channel it. Oh, it states per gem the maximum limit. All right, I'm just going to say with Cremation that the answer is I don't know. To any questions related to it. Now, people are asking how Rizlatha's Coil works in conjunction with further conversion. Yeah, so Rizlatha's Coil will work. Rizlatha's Coil and Volatility will work with Smite. So if your weapon is dealing physical damage originally, so if the weapon itself says I'm dealing physical damage, then Rizlatha's Coil will modify that. Volatility Support will modify it as well, and Smite will then convert some of it. But it'll work well. So Ignite, yeah. If you're wanting to if you're wanting to league start Ignite, I feel like you could probably go I feel like Ground Slam and EQ both have things going for them for Ignite. I need to recheck the numbers on some of that, so I'm not going to give a definitive recommendation yet. That's something that needs some research, but there's a bunch of options there, and you could do it on a bunch of different ascendancies too. Anyone left side of the tree. That's a good question someone's raising about Corrupting Cry. Corrupted Blood inflicted by... So supported Warcries inflict Corrupted Blood on the first enemy hit by each attack that they exert. Yeah, that means that you're only going to get the refresh on the first one. So the Warcry is going to fire off 4 Corrupted Blood debuffs. Then you donk an enemy on the head, and the first enemy that's hit by that is going to then have that duration refreshed. Hopefully the duration of the 4 Corrupted Blood debuffs are enough to kill the trash monsters. That's what you want to have happen there. If that's not the case, then it's going to be like you get 4 initially on everything, then you'll go from 4 to 5 and a refreshed duration on the one that you hit, specifically with your exerted attack. Question that's come up about punishment, the curse. It is based upon the victim of the punishment curse's low life status. So if you're at full life and your enemy is at low life and you've inflicted punishment on that enemy, you'll get the bonus damage. So it's based on the enemy being low. And with the question about builds that's come up in chat, I think that for new builds, you could actually bring back Lightning Strike now. Lightning Strike was nerfed really hard, but Lightning Strike gets a lot out of the Volatility Support. You could probably try Fizz Bleed, but I'm not going to recommend it. You could use Volatility in conjunction with Rizlatha's Coil on with a physical damage weapon on pretty much anything. That's going to be really good, as long as you're willing to use Rizlatha's Coil in your belt slot. Control Blaze Support looks like it's going to be interesting. We've got the Hex Blast with Sacrifice is looking dangerous but cool. We have Spellblade Support with Energy Blade. Looks like it could be really good on an Ignite build, but also quite Glass Cannon. But the damage should really be there. Locus Mine will fit into existing bow builds as an alternative to Artillery Ballista as a way to get some extra single target damage. And Sadism Support is going to be extremely niche. I think that's basically it for the gems. I think I'm going to call this for the moment. Those of you that have joined the stream late, you can rewind it, watch it in its entirety. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to do a bunch more research on various things. Then I'm going to put together a condensed video for Day 9 teasers. And then after that, we'll try to get I'm going to try and do some brainstorming of the build I'm thinking of playing, which is going to be Chieftain Righteous Fire, but using Searing Bond instead of Fire Trap. So it's somewhat different to the meta Righteous Fire builds, but should be recognizably the same concepts. And that's something I want to brainstorm, but I'm probably going to brainstorm that either myself offline or over on Twitch rather than here. So, thank you all. May your Valobs have interesting results, and I will see you around. And